big result for Arsenal.
Huge.
Huge.
Yeah. I sort of said on Twitter and stuff, it was a comeback. I know it was a draw and they were never in a losing position, but it felt like a comeback. The way that Arsenal were so flat after Aaron Ramsdale mistake, obviously we'll talk about it later on. But overall, to get a 2-1 win, I feel that last season, that is a 1-1 draw. The stadium's flat, people leaving early, and they don't have the mentality to get back in it. And arguably, they don't have the player that can kind of get into that position and score that clutch goal. That is Kai Havertz.
Do you want to know something? Kai Havertz is really starting to get on my nerves. Like, really starting to get on my nerves, because I still don't rate him, but I must concede that he is doing the business.
Huge.
He's already scored the same amount of goals for Arsenal this season than he scored in his best season for Chelsea. He's turning up when it most matters. He's turned into a player who's sort of lethal in the air, very good in the air. He is now responsible for them winning games. He's responsible for them accruing points. He's responsible for last-minute winners. He's playing to the end. He's displaying that edge and that fight and that venom that is so necessary to be a top-tier player and to be a Premier League champion.
Yeah.
He's displaying all those attributes, all those qualities.
Yeah, you're spot on.
And it's a real worry. There are two ways to look at this Arsenal result, though. I think one way is probably the way that I'm looking at it, which is, this is massive for them. This is the perfect storm. They're fighting to the end. They are winning games when it most matters in the last minute, and that is arguably what makes champions. But there is another way to look at it. The other way is, this is something that you've said to me, actually, I often think it's right. You said it to me about Arsenal this time last year. You said it's all too emotional. It's all too last minute. I remember when they beat Villa away from home. Remember the Jorginho hit the bar, Emi Martinez, little cushion header.
Yeah.
I remember saying to you, and you were spot on, actually, with hindsight. I remember saying to you in the aftermath of that, God, what they've done there is so it's so in keeping with being champions. And you said it's just too emotional. There's just too much. You can't have these cup finals 10, 15 games before the end of the season. You can't constantly do that. Ultimately, you pull these results out the bag once or twice. You can't be doing it constantly. Do you think that this Arsenal team... look, you're a Man City fan. Are you scared of Arsenal, or is your focus Liverpool?
I'm scared of both. I think it's a perfect storm for Arsenal, because last season Arsenal had themselves, they had to rely on themselves to take points off City, and they didn't do that. They lost home and away last season in the Premier League to Man City and in the FA Cup as well. This season they've already beaten Liverpool in the league. This season they've beaten Man City in the league. They've set themselves up to be in a position where they go to the Etihad and it's in their hands. They can win at the Etihad. That's what sport's about. It's about taking these opportunities and giving it the chance to do it on your own terms. If you lose to Brentford at home, if you draw to Brentford at home, especially after the mistake that Aaron Ramsdale made, then it's no good for Arsenal. It's repeating the same old cycles. But something changed, and something's changed this season. Beating Liverpool at Anfield the way they did, beating Man City 1-0, keeping a clean sheet, the way they're scoring goals away from home, almost never been seen before in this competition. They got the best defensive record in the last few months in all of Europe. They're outscoring everyone in Europe.
They've got the best goal. They've got the best goal difference in the Premier League. I know it's huge, isn't it?
It's huge, mate. I think they've turned a corner. Now, if they go to the Etihad and lose to this great Man City side, a generational side, then I think Arsenal fans can live with that better. I'd still argue that with the money they've spent, with the amount of confidence these Arsenal fans have, that they should be trying to win that game at the very minimum, or at least draw the game and not lose, especially the way they lost last season. All I can say is the way they got back into the Brentford game in the final 20 minutes showed so much control. It looked like a Premier League title-winning performance.
I would argue that the result against Brentford at home is probably more significant and more impressive than any of their other wins, maybe with the exception of the Liverpool game in January.
Yeah.
All of the wins this year, so there's 9 of them. The most impressive is what they did in the last couple of minutes against Brentford, because, look, we've seen them score 4 goals this year. We've seen them score 5 goals. We've seen them score 6 goals twice. Right? We know that they've got goals galore in the team. We know that they can do that. But when they score 4, 5, what do you learn? They smash up Sheffield United. What do you learn about them?
The West Ham one was special.
What do they learn about themselves?
No, yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
Whereas when they nick it against Brentford, I think you learn so much about them.
Yeah,
That's being champions, isn't it?
Yeah.
Not playing that well, not really deserving it. I mean, they deserved it over the course of the 90 minutes. But when the score's 1-1 at home with 2 minutes left, you could argue that Brentford have done so much for the vast majority of the game that they deserve a point.
Mm,
You know,
of
even
course
if
they do.
they've had, you know.
Yeah. What do
So-
you make of Aaron Ramsdale's mistake? I might have gone a bit heavy on Twitter and stuff like that.
What did you say?
I basically said he shouldn't play for Arsenal ever again.
He won't play for Arsenal ever again. That is his last game for Arsenal.
You think that's his last game? Yeah. What did you make of the mistake? Was there any aspect to it where it wasn't quite his fault? Was the pass soft? Is there any discussion there at all?
No. He is completely and utterly responsible for that moment. What's happening, everyone? I'm terribly sorry to interrupt your clip, but trust me, this is news that you need to hear. You could win not £250,000, not £500,000, but £750,000, £750,000, simply by predicting 6 football scores correctly. That is right. 6 football scores, all thanks to the wonderful folk at Super 6. If you download the app, it won't cost you a penny. And if you predict 6 football scores correctly, they are employing a rollover. £750,000 in your skyrocket simply by predicting those scores correctly. It really is that simple. Plus, if you win our mini league, you get to play for us against Pitchside, and if you win it on a weekly basis, you will get a £100 voucher for classic football shirts. Enjoy the rest of the clip. He was completely and utterly responsible for a potential moment in Arsenal season where they would have lost ground in the title race if you're generous, and lost all traction in the title race if you're harsh. He would have been responsible for that. And I think people were being very nice to Ramsdale. And I think you and I sit in very different places with regard to Aaron Ramsdale, with regard to how good he is. But, you know, what he did in that game, and people will say, but look at the saves afterwards. There was a brilliant save from the header. There was a brilliant save from the Ivan Toney pot shot. Nothing makes up. You know, people, and I think the commentary team does it. There seems to be this really nice approach in football these days where people go, he made up for it. You don't make up for that. It scores 1-1. You've conceded a goal just before half time.
He did make some good saves in the second half, but
that doesn't make up. That's what you're meant to make.
Yeah, of course.
That doesn't make up for the terrible. And look, he won't play for Arsenal again. And I don't know if you saw this image, but I saw him drop to his knees. Did you see it? He's got his hands. If you're listening on the pod here, he's got his hands delicately draped around his ears to suggest that he is cancelling out the hate.
I think he's living on vibes. I think he knows that it's his last hurrah. I think he's thinking about going to Marbella in the summer to have a nice time, have a holiday before he finds a new club. He's a bottom level Premier League keeper. He always has been. He will never be world class.
See, all of this I don't agree with, but I do think that.
But where do you see it?
Because I would say
you said he was better than Joe Hart and Pickford and all that. As an England keeper, he's bang average.
But mate, for 2 years, this time last year, he was one of the best keepers in the league, and the year before that, I think he was brilliant for Arsenal. Okay, it didn't go Arsenal's way, but he didn't put a foot wrong.
But brilliance when you come 8th is a very different narrative, or come 5th, or come 2nd. To be a top-level keeper...
He was brilliant for them last year.
He was brilliant. You can still be brilliant. There's always 3 or 4 keepers every year that are brilliant.
Do you remember the performance that he put in at White Hart Lane? Do you remember that the fan jumped on and kicked him?
Yeah.
Like, look, the way that you talk about him, I feel like you're talking about... I don't know, like...
Do you know what I compared him to last
Robert
night?
Sanchez or Kepa Arrizabalaga?
I know what you mean. He's better than those keepers, of course. Do you know what I said on my channel last night when I reviewed the game? I thought it reminds me of Tim Howard at Man United. He was never a Man United keeper, very, very good keeper, but he was a little bit too... He was a big fish. He was a small fish in a very, very big pond. Never good enough to make it be the number one keeper. He went to Everton. He played 400 games, 500 games for Everton. He was absolutely incredible, right? He isn't a Man United. He isn't an Arsenal keeper. He's not a Man United keeper. He's not a Liverpool keeper. He's an Everton. He's an Aston Villa. If we view Aston Villa as a top 10 side, he's a West Ham keeper. He isn't an Arsenal keeper.
We interestingly, you were sort of saying this even when he was really good, weren't you?
I've never thought we talk about keepers in their prime and these periods of time. I've seen Joe Hart as one of those kind of frustrating England keepers who we see all the talent in the world and then they make mistakes, or they're shouting at ball boys for England at Euro 2016 and losing to Iceland. Joe Hart's peak for 2 years at Man City far outstrips any talent I've ever seen from Aaron Ramsdale. And I'll sit here and say that he fell off quick, Joe Hart, after he made a few mistakes. He was a fantastic servant to the club and a legend. Aaron Ramsdale will never win the Premier League, in my opinion. Never win the Premier League.
It's very difficult. No, I don't think he will now, because I think whatever club he goes to next, well, it's not going to be Liverpool and it's not going to be City and it's going to be leaving Arsenal.
It's Forest, isn't it? It's something like that. It's a Forest. If Leeds come up next season, he'll go to Leeds. Something like that.
But he's
been relegated so many times in his career.
I think there's a real problem with him. Don't get me wrong. I really do think there's a real problem with him. Simply off the back of some of his interviews more than his performances. You know, the way that he's spoken, for example, You know the way that that interview with Ian Wright blew my mind.
Yeah.
And actually, everything that he said in that game about concentration, that was on display when we saw it the other day at the Emirates.
Yeah.
When he's not concentrating.
No.
So no, I do massively think there's an issue. I do think there's a problem. But if we're actually exploring it, you know how you said Forest? I think look, I'm very happy with Petrovic. I don't particularly like Sanchez. But Ramsdale is better than all of the goalkeepers at Chelsea, isn't he?
You can't want him at Chelsea.
No, I'm not. No, I don't want him. I
adjustment.
don't want him because I don't want him because I don't rate him outside of. I don't like the way he speaks. I don't like the way he conducts himself. I don't like all this. I don't like.
That's ridiculous.
I don't like him saying that he can't concentrate. But simply trying to appreciate the ability. Like, he's clearly a better goalkeeper than Robert Sanchez, isn't
Yeah, but that's a low bar to set. I think you could take the Palace keeper. I think you could take Jose Sarr at Wolves, for example. I think that's a low bar to set. I think you'd be struggling, Rory. I wouldn't want to sit next to you on the club every week with Ramsdale on goal for Chelsea.
Do you think we'll ever see him play for Arsenal again?
No.
Do you think
no.
Arteta's just sick of him?
Yeah, I think he'll be absolutely livid with what happened, and they'll try and get through it and just pray that Ray isn't injured.
I know we've spoken about it, mate, but I've got to bring it up again. That reaction to it was ridiculous. Aaron Ramsdale's reaction.
Yeah, it's madness. It's madness.
Like, who on earth do you think you are? How is that the move?
Yeah, it's crazy. But should we just wrap up and sort of any other observations from the game from you? I think Jorginho was fantastic. Declan Rice obviously scored a fantastic goal as well.
Declan Rice is amazing, but do you know where I have to go? Like, I think Ben White deserves a mention here as well. He was, the epicentre for 2 goals. Really brilliant. He's been... Since he got back from Dubai, he's been a man possessed. You know, when he got his tan back, he's been a man possessed. Weird look about the guy, but he has been amazing. And it's getting to the stage now where you say he has to play for England. He has to start for England, even out of position at centre-half. But do you know where I have to go back to? It's getting to the stage now where if Arsenal win the league and it's looking a real prospect, a huge reason as to why they win the league will be because of Kai Havertz.
Yeah.
I don't want Havertz to do well and I don't want Arsenal to win the league. And these two awful forces, Arsenal winning the league and Havertz, are sort of combining to create one Voldemort-type character.
Yeah.
See that reference?
Yeah, Harry Potter.
That was for you, mate. Leavesden Studios. But yeah, not overly
Cards on the table then. Where do they finish? Cards on the table.
Arsenal?
Yeah.
Do you know what, Buvey? I'm not avoiding your question here. I promise. It sounds like I'm going to dance around this because I don't want to do that. But it's getting to the stage with this Premier League title race.
It's hard.
And this is the best thing that you can say about it. This demonstrates the beauty of the title race. I ain't got a clue.
No, I think they'll come second.
I think they either come first or third. Weirdly, the only way I think they either win it or they finish below.
We've covered every number, haven't we?
We're all bases covered. We can't be wrong.
So this video will live forever.
We can't be wrong.
Beautiful.
Between us on the club, we have got the number right. Yeah.